So in other words, we are creating so-called positive, or in that case with the phone, negative externalities. If the company had to, or just did pollute the river to create their products, and they don't have to pay for it, but the community has to pay, that's a negative externality. This is not a new concept. of things, networks of sensors, either that a city installed them, or we are creative thinking about what could we measure with these phones. They have quite a few sensors already built in. Then we have specialized hardware gadgets. You will see tomorrow probably. Raspberry Pis are the variant for do-it-yourself community projects. So there's some technology there that can help. But nevertheless, not everything can be measured with a sensor, with a mechanical or an electronic device. Sometimes you have to ask people. So I put an empty jury bench here. But that's also interesting. If you want to find out something by asking a large group of people, how do you motivate, incentivize the people to participate in the first place? Of course, I can ask you all the time all kinds of things, and if you always answer, that's quite convenient for me. But why should you do that? So there are ideas around human oracles or collectives of humans as decentralized oracles to help create. So the planting tree thing, just think about it for a moment. Let's assume we are a village somewhere and we want to incentivize the planting of trees because we are close to the desert and the desert is ever expanding because there has been a lot of tree cutting in the past. So I would say, yeah, let's create a coin and everybody who plants a tree gets a coin, to be very, very simple. But how do we do the proving? Would you put sensors? What type of sensors? Would you put a webcam and every day 3 more trees are there and somebody waves to the camera and say, that my trees, give me 2 coins? Maybe. Maybe in some cases that works. Maybe you find another sensor that is more independent of the human factor and is closer to the tree planting thing. But maybe you cannot come up with a sensor idea. And then maybe you ask the village people, did Mark plant trees last Sunday? How many? 3? And then the majority of you says, or I give 3, 4, 5, and maybe we have a curve, and most of you would say he planted 4 trees. So what's the criterion to say, okay, that's probably true, and Mark gets 4 coins? And the tree is just an example. Pick any other thing from the nice list of sustainability challenges we have and possibilities we have to come up with incentive systems. Because it's a research project, system is a generic scheme from right to left. Starting with the sensing part, I just explained and I'll give a few examples of what we are thinking and talking about. That information, digitizing the information that a tree has planted needs to be stored somewhere probably, unless it's streaming real-time data, but probably a tree that is planted and grows for a few decades is not something you need in real time, but other things maybe you need. Then you have to think of a system that is proving that this real life event actually happened. With sensors, human oracles, collective oracles, etc. Then we want to tokenize this information. It's not just 4 trees for Mark, but the question is it 4 coins? And how does this price get established? Do we just create these tokens for every new plant, every new tree? Or do we say, in the beginning, we want to have 100,000 trees, and so there are 100,000 tokens? And how does it work? Who gets the tokens? And if you think in more complex terms, maybe you want to address more than one challenge in a community, and maybe you have 2 tokens that are actually interacting. And if then in addition you say, well, who creates tokens in the first place? Who comes up with the point, let's make 3 coins? And who actually does it? And one idea of the project is the community can come up with the idea and just create that coin. So the bottom-up creation of money, quote unquote, of new tokens by the community. It's not the Swiss government or any other government or any central bank, for that matter, who would come up with these new tokens, but we would. So how is that process going to go? And at the end, and that's now coming back with the economic glasses on that topic, economists usually say, well, the way how to deal with externalities is to so-called internalize them, to put them into the price transactions of the normal transaction. We think we can leave it as a separate thing because it's also possible, and have a decentralized market, or markets, better to say markets, that would allow to trade these currencies or these, well, digital representations or assets that got created through that process. Just to help you orientate a little bit, here are a few logos of different projects. Some of you have, some of them you know, some of them you have heard maybe for the first time today, and some you haven't heard yet. And it's not about, how to say, it's not a recommendation or something. It's just to also show you, and our list where we're working on with Mark is like 50 different projects you could locate on this chart. So this one you should know because it was introduced today. It's Ethereum. IOTA is another, not blockchain. It's a different technology, but it has a similar function. Sorry. Polkadot is an interesting project that tries to connect different types of blockchains. IPFS is about storage. Streamer, as the name indicates, is about getting streaming data somehow into the system. Ambrosus, you heard earlier. Oracleize is a support for the proving function. Region Network, who couldn't make it to be here, they're actually doing something similar to my planting tree example. They're trying to measure CO2 capture by putting sensors in the soil and giving coins to farmers. Quite interesting. Have a look, region.network. Kleros is something quite different, maybe. It's how do you process disagreements in such a decentralized network? Let's say Mark claims I planted 5 trees, and I, who for whatever reason am the one who would give him the coins, just say it's not true. How do we settle disputes in a decentralized manner? And Kleros actually tries to build a whole judicial system based on decentralized and blockchain technology. And District OX is even further. Besides my name, Dapp, the other name that was mentioned today is DAO. The guy will come tomorrow. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. The idea is, let's not just build a few smart contracts to model a process, but let's create an organization based on smart contracts. So we all together would form an organization, a DAO. We would have smart contracts for voting, decision-making, investment of funds, agreeing on processes, etc., etc. And District OX is a framework and also software that helps you build these types of communities as DAOs. So to make it even more complex and a bit more confusing to you, maybe we are not talking about currencies here, but maybe we should create a DAO around planting trees and another DAO for another externality, because the DAO would be also the community to sanction activity and could help to impose rules that in another way you cannot easily implement. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of questions. The goal of our project is twofold. One is to think about this conceptually and write designs and describe how that could work theoretically, conceptually. And also, like Stefan was saying earlier, the goal is, or the second goal or deliverable is, let's stitch together a piece of software or several pieces of software that go from the right to the left, simply to show that it's possible, not more. Simply to show it's possible to do. It may be slow, energy consuming even, all kinds of problems. But we need to show that this is possible to be able to, ask people for support for this technology and also for support to address the problems I was mentioning in the very beginning. Because think about it, if you ignore everything I just said, all the slides, and I go back to the goals, what really interesting new ideas have you heard in the last few years to address these problems? Not so many. This is not to say blockchain will save the world. I'm not saying this. I'm just saying it's an interesting technology. You can do really interesting things you couldn't do before. And we just started to learn about this as a society. So doing research in all these questions is very interesting. We invite you to join us. We will also come up with 2 challenges tomorrow, where we hope you'll find interest to join us. But nevertheless, there's a lot to do, and we hope you learn enough this week, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of motivation and commitment to work on this, hopefully also in the future, because probably this technology is something you can build a career on, I would guess. So it makes a lot of sense to really know about it and also have a goal that is beyond creating a currency. So now I hope these 3 lines of buzzwords make a little bit more sense than they did before. I couldn't talk about all of them, because we just don't have enough time for that, and it's not needed at the moment. But approach us with any questions you have today, tomorrow, in the Slack, on-chain, off-chain, online, offline, and thanks for listening.
So thank you, Marcus. Maybe we have time for 2 questions until we go to the next presentations. Any questions right now?
I'm usually killing the audience with this.
There is one over here.
In the beginning. Please?
So we are talking about decentralized areas, but perhaps you might know that there are some concepts like energy or power, electricity, which scale better when they are more centralized. You know, they become more efficient only when they are managed top-down or business or the national grid. And so would you say that the blockchain technology should focus more on technology which can be efficiently decentralized or broken down?
That's
Is there a radical way of changing that as well?
that's oh yeah. So the question was, correct me. The question was, there are several technologies or application areas that tend to be organized centrally for efficiency, scale of economy reasons, and blockchain is, well, obviously gives a hand to decentralized approaches. And the question was, do I think that we should basically try blockchain technology in areas that are kind of close to the idea of decentralization, or if it should be more radical? I mean, it's nearly a philosophical discussion, and I'm happy to do that as well. But for the moment, I would say that if you say energy efficiency, of course you need to be efficient if you have one central place and you have to connect to everybody else over long distance. because then you need energy alone to maintain the infrastructure and the whole system. If you, on the other side of the spectrum, think about neighborhoods that create their own energy through solar roofs and other technologies, they don't have to transport it anywhere. They can leave it on site, basically. So in other words, that may not be, I mean, it depends on the perspective when you talk about efficiency. For the utility provider, it's horribly ineffective and inefficient, but it's also not their business model at all. They are not organized in this way. So it's not efficient in that business model. But in a system where the household looks at, they might say, what's not efficient? It's my neighbors. How close can they, I mean, what could be closer than my neighbors? And we share the energy. So yes, I think the potential of blockchain lies well, you're getting closer to the potential when you start to think in new ways, really in new ways, to just say, okay, that's the system how it worked today. It's centralized, efficient, whatever, for different reasons, and there are good reasons why it's like this, transaction costs being one. But now we have a system that may overcome a few of these barriers and allow for decentralized approaches. So I would challenge everyone to think about decentralization as a strategy and then move on. But there's, of course, also resistance to that.
Okay, if we have a very short question and short answer, we can still take it. Otherwise, we move on. So, over there.
The name of the project with the CO2 sensor?
This one, the green one, region.network. The URL is called region.network.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so thanks.
Thank you very much.
And just to say, after BIOTS, we are still at the university, and if you're looking for other things other ways how to engage, like master thesis and stuff like that, also please just approach us. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the wrong way, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, about our next speaker, I have to tell you a short story how we met, actually, because that's probably the most interesting part, why he's here today. Sorry, that was wrong. There's many reasons. But it's that sounds wrong, huh? That sounds really wrong. That wasn't my